Good evening. Planning Board is now in session. First item is to welcome our new Planning Board member, Mrs. Marnie Houlihan. Welcome. And let the record show that we have a newly elected selectman in the audience also tonight. Marty, stand up, Marty, so we can see you all at home on TV. Thank you for attending, and welcome. First item on the agenda is the election of Planning Board members, board organization. Karina. This is something we do every year right after the election to see who wants to be the chair, who wants to be the vice chair, and so on.
Right, so due to the recent election, the planning board has to vote on a chairman and a vice chair person for the record to put into meeting minutes.
I make a motion that Mr. Morris be chair for the next year.
Second.
As I say every year, I'm very grateful and willing to let someone else do it, although I think today was a good example of my ability to, be in town like the previous chairman, so that if something comes up, I can be here, which I was this morning within 20 minutes for an administrative matter. So motion's been made and seconded. Any other motions on that? No? No discussion? All in favor? Abstain. 4-0.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next position is the vice chairman for the planning board. Mr. Stein.
I'd like to make a motion that we re-elect Andrew Mills for vice chair of the planning board.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? 4-0. No discussion on that one.
I'm honored.
So before we leave tonight, there's a form that we fill out every year with our signatures, and it gets sent to the Worcester District Registry of Deeds, so they can compare our signatures on documents that we sign here, and they get filed at the registry. So before we go, we'll sign that.
Would you like to do any of the appointments?
Yeah. Okay, next item is an appointment to,
The Master Plan Committee for a member-at-large seat. We have a citizens' activity form from Ms. Bonnie Feniff, who is interested in taking the seat for member-at-large.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve Ms. Bonnie Faniff
Faniff.
to be a member at large to the master plan committee.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Next item.
The next item we have is the planning board needs to vote on a planning board representative to the Metro West Regional Collaborative. Mimi Luttrell held the seat for the prior year.
Mr. Stein.
I'd like to make a motion that we re-nominate and elect Mimi Luttrell as the representative of the said committee, as written.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. Next item.
The next item is to reestablish the Open Space Design Bylaw Subcommittee with appointment of members. Previously, last July, the planning board voted Jesse Stein, Mimi Luttrell, and appointed Frederica Gillespie as representative from the Open Space Preservation Commission to the Open Space Design Bylaws Subcommittee, which the term expires June 30th, 2019. So if we want to proceed with eventually working on this bylaw, we should reestablish this committee.
Make a motion we keep the members as the prior years for the open space, what is it?
Design Bylaw Subcommittee.
Design Bylaw Subcommittee. Ms. Luttrell and Jesse Stein. And Ms. Gillespie.
I second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I think we can let that expire for now, seeing as we're doing the master plan. We can see where that leads in relation to any bylaw updates.
Similar to our position on other requested
Downtown.
zoning changes like downtown. Mr. Stein?
I understand, but administratively, doesn't it make sense to at least keep it active so that after the master plan committee completes its work, we can get right back to, because I'm sure that some bylaw is going to come out of
Yeah.
those discussions. So if we let it expire, wouldn't it just be more work to recreate the subcommittee later? Why don't we just keep it going now? Is there any reason not to?
Well, just because we're not going to, I don't think we'll be doing anything on it for a while.
How long?
I don't know.
Karina, am I correct that it was going to expire on June 30th, 2019 as it was? Is that right?
Yes, as it
Yeah.
stands, it'll expire automatically, but if you'd like to reestablish, planning board would have to vote to reestablish.
So I don't think the master plan is going to be done. I mean, I think you're going to have to reestablish it anyway.
Okay.
So where are we? We're
I think the consensus is to let it expire, and we'll recreate the subcommittee at some point in the future.
So are you withdrawing your motion, Mr.?
I withdraw.
Okay. Okay, next
So there's
item.
no vote. Can I just have those documents back?
Do we need to do the CPC appointment too? If we're doing,
No,
no?
that's
Okay.
Board of Selectmen appoints the CPC. You mean the planning
we have
board
a
representative?
Planning board representative.
I looked, no, next year.
Okay, all right.
If I'm not mistaken, it's next year. There's two. Jesse's on something and you're on, Shop C and CPC expire next year. Okay. I think that's it.
Okay, next item on the agenda is public hearing for 325 Turnpike Road, modification of a major site plan approval. We'll ask the town planner to read the public hearing notice. Keeping in mind that we try to be very efficient every night, there may be a reason to be even more efficient tonight.
This is the public hearing notice for modification of a major site plan approval, 325 Turnpike Road, Assessors Map 26, Lots 2 and 10. Per Section 17410 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, June 3rd, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. To consider the application of James Sotheby, CFO of Ken's Foods, Inc., regarding the property located at 325 Turnpike Road in Southborough, Mass. For modification of a major site plan approval. This hearing concerns changes to the major site plan approval granted by the Planning Board on June 19, 2017 for 325 Turnpike Road, Assessors Map 26, Lots 2 and 10, located in the Industrial Park and Residence A districts. Changes include elimination of north loading docks and associated pavement and the widening of the west loading dock access drive aisles with associated additional lighting. Copy of the plans and application may be reviewed at the planning office at the Southborough Townhouse during normal business hours or at the Planning Board's web page, http://southboroughtown.com/planning-board. Any person wishing to be heard on the proposed changes should appear at the time and place designated. Donald C. Morris, Chair, Planning Board.
Thank you. Mr. Doty, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on a second. I just wanted to say hi to you. I think we have a letter to read. Is it the fire department comments? Do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
You'd like me to proceed?
No, she's going to read the
Okay,
fire
got it.
department letter.
Okay.
Then we'll turn it over to you.
That's okay, I'll be quick with this. Thorough, but quick.
That's what we want.
I'd like to point out that the applicant submitted with the applicant package a certified letter from a PE indicating that the stormwater report and plans from the stormwater permit and the notice of intent amendment that that went through conservation last fall is the same as what's being presented here this evening. So that's included in the package. We received comments from the fire department. You want me to read them?
Yes.
Quickly? Oh, okay. So a memo was received from the Southborough Fire Department on May 23rd for 325 Turnpike Road from Fire Chief Stephen Achilles. Comments read this way. Access. Number 1, all turns, access, and cul-de-sacs shall be designed to accommodate the vehicles to the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, AASHTO, BUS-45 design standard. Number 2, all drainage, culverts, septic systems, components, underground utilities, and chambers shall be designed to AASHTO H20 and HS20 weight loading standards. Access along all streets and driveways shall need a minimum height clearance of 13 feet 6 inches, Massachusetts Code of Regulation 527 CMR Chapter 18 to allow for proper ingress, egress of fire apparatus and emergency vehicles. All access roads and driveways shall be a minimum of 20 feet wide, Massachusetts Code of Regulation 527 CMR Chapter 18. Regarding access gates, address, building numbering, no comments, not applicable driveways, fire department sprinkler connections, not applicable fire lanes, not applicable fire hydrants, not applicable fire sprinklers, not applicable parking, not applicable permits, not applicable response times for fire, medical, and other emergencies, not applicable water supply, not applicable other comments, not applicable. And since I read it so fast, here it is. I should have put it up first. There we go. Represented in this memo, which is also found on the website under the public hearing documents for this project. We received an email from Mr. Doty with response comments to the fire department's review comments. Would you like me to read those as well? Okay.
This is your turn to go over that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Address the fire.
Sure, I'll address the fire department comments first.
Do you, maybe you could go up, take the mic with you,
Yeah,
and just go
point
over,
out things.
go over the modifications.
Okay, all right, and then I can address, I guess, the fire department comments. I just want, for recollection, I was before the board in fall of last year, after we'd been to the Conservation Commission, and the board voted that we should come through and submit the changes also. The changes amount to the areas that are shown in green on this plan, and I think you also have that exhibit in your package, are changing from pavement to open space landscape. The area in gray there is open space landscape that's being turned into pavement. It's easy to see from visually here, there's a net increase in green space. There's a net positive drainage result in a reduction in peak flows and a reduction in volume, also drainage volumes. And as the town planners as Corinne has pointed out, that it's been reviewed by Fuss and O'Neill within the context of drainage for the notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. The changes that did not affect the fire access. In fact, this driveway here is opened up even more. It passed the AASHTO bus 45-foot bus criteria prior, and the fire department had reviewed it originally. And the pavement that was added here actually opens that up even more for access. They can make the rounds completely throughout the site. Matter of fact, I think they regularly go out here and test that, and have been able to do so. The lighting changes. This is the same orientation. It's a little bit harder to see here. Route 9 on the right, on your right, my left, and the parking area here. New lights were added on the driveway, median strip, and also the 3 lights that were where the original driveway was on the west edge, should be the south edge, are now all moved in as the island moved in, where the pavement took some green space from the landscape. All the green space that was added is up in here in the back, north side of the building. When we met in the fall, the board had voted, I believe, and agreed, and it's acceptable to Ken's Foods, is to review this lighting. Let's see it for a year and see how it goes. To my knowledge, in the several months that have passed since that time, I don't think I've heard anything from town staff or anything from Ken's Foods through the neighbors, or from neighbors of anybody of a concern with the lighting levels out here. But still, that's not been a year yet. Those are the basics. I don't think there's much more substance, really, to the changes than that, except it just deserved a public hearing for the changes.
Very good, thank you. I'll open up to the board and then to the public. Mr. Mills?
I've been in there once to turn around so I could text my family or get directions. So I have seen it. It complies and looks sufficient across the board. The lighting too, I've been by a number of times at night and haven't. I actually have to remind myself to look over there so I'm not distracted by the lighting to look over there. So
That's nice to hear. That's nice to
I have
hear.
an issue with it. So no questions.
Mrs. Houlihan?
Hi, I'm new to the board. I wasn't on the previous meeting.
I understand. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just in reading through, I only had one question, and that was the changes to the west loading dock, and I think it's the Main Street lighting. The new lights are added to the driveway median island. So are those new lights, they have been added in there, part of the review, the one-year plan that we have, or are you here to get them approved?
If the planning board finds that it's suitable to approve it now, based on their review in the last several months, that's fine. If not, it'd be okay. A condition to that effect on the decision would be okay, that we wait another several months until the year has passed. But that it did include, these have been in since last fall. All the lights that are shown on the plan have been in since last fall. And the north loading docks that were removed have already been removed. This was a post-work. One of the things you may not understand, Ms. Miller, and is that this was a post-work asking for permission after it was, anyway, or I guess with apologies. This is the area where the north loading docks, which haven't been used for quite a long time, have been removed here. And there's this other paved area here that's being removed also,
Thank you. No other questions.
Mr. Stein?
My only concern is when you lose green space facing Route 9, I feel like the aesthetics change. Is there anything we can do in terms of screening or landscaping to compensate for losing the green space facing?
I was concerned about that myself, but you may remember, however, this area here that's immediately in front of it is very thickly wooded. And it's that change there on the ground plane that you can see, because we're looking at it from 30,000 feet, is very apparent. But it's really you don't see it. It's not an impact, even from I believe from the westbounds on Route 9. You don't really see that increase. I think the concern there is whether or not, and I think the chairman might bring this up later on, is whether or not that's also going to be some additional standing area, which is, I think, another issue that I would like to remind the board of. Those are meant to be driveways, not areas for trucks to stay. So it wouldn't be, that's where it would be really apparent, I think, Mr. Stein, if there was trucks sitting there at that location. That would make a big difference, as opposed to being inside. As far as additional landscape goes, I think that the Ken's Foods has done quite a good job, I think, out there in landscaping the front of the building, the south, between the south lawn and the building, after removing a lot of the older overgrown pine trees and evergreens that were there. But we certainly don't have any room here to actually the mature wetland landscape and buffer zone landscape comes right up to our curb almost. And so there's really no room to plant there.
Where are the dumpsters?
What they do with their they don't really create solid waste here to any extent. I mean, they've got the manufacturing is done in Marlborough primarily, where they make the salad dressings and the barbecue sauce. They get put on pallets, wrapped up, and they fill this warehouse. I know we still on our tour. They fill up this warehouse throughout the winter, the fall and winter months for the summer. Basically, there's a lot of Baby Ray's barbecue sauce in here. So there's not removal of materials. Any of the cardboard that they're in and the plastic wrap they're in come in and go out with the products. The dumpsters, I think they have some domestic waste, solid waste associated with their offices in the back. And quite frankly, we don't have a dumpster on this site. I think they just do a trash removal, perhaps at this loading dock here when they need to, and they probably bring it to Marlborough to their facility there. Is my guess.
Snow storage is the same as it was before?
Snow storage is still the same. There's plenty of room along the edges and excess areas that are paved. Originally, actually what's happened is this. Our major snow storage areas were these two areas now that are grass, which is even better, I think, with the snow going on there, the filter through before it gets to the drainage, the receiving water resources that are surrounding the site.
Mrs. Littrell.
Sorry. The areas where the pavement was removed, what was planted there?
It's lawns. It's going to be lawns,
Is
as there is in the back there now.
Is it lawn already?
No, it's not. I believe it's probably just been seeded this spring, actually.
So it's already been seeded?
It's prepared.
Oh, okay.
It's prepared, and I believe it's been hydroseeded, and for the last hydroseeding that's going to go on throughout the disturbed areas to get it established as lawn. There's Ken's does not have a real desire to landscape back here other than lawns. There's a 25-foot high wall here. I don't know if you've been in the back here at all. That was done for sound attenuation for the neighbors when they were using the north loading docks. And so this whole area is not really viewed by anyone except employees to go back here and go into the office areas, which is in that northeast corner.
Well, the reason I ask is because we're promoting native plantings in Southborough. There are many reasons for that.
Yeah, we are using native or indigenous plant materials in the restoration areas that are associated with the wetland filings that are off to the edge and outside of this, and further north in this area and further east in this area.
Have those been planted?
The restoration area, I believe, here that was associated with the septic system work has been done. And this area here, which is a stormwater treatment basin that captures the water from this parking lot as its sheet flows this way. It was under prior to Ken's Foods. It's now being captured in a treatment swale or a treatment, what we call sort of a bioretention facility. That's in process. I think the earthwork there is just being finished. So that has not been planted yet.
Okay. Because I noticed that your trees are too small and don't meet the required size of the bylaw there. We require 8 feet, and they say, this says 6 to 7.
Wasn't, the trees that are associated with that, those are related to the wetland filing. And I think those were under the jurisdiction and approval of the Conservation Commission for those purposes. And I don't think they were not intended to, there were no proposed plantings associated with site plan for this project. The landscape was not a part of that, of the site plan proposal. The landscape work that's being done out there now is being done as a matter of course by Ken's Foods themselves. The planting material that you may see on plans has to do with Wetland Conservation Commission filings, not with site plan filings.
Okay. No, no more question.
Yeah, this site has a long history. I think the building was built in 1970, before the neighborhood was constructed. And then, you know, there was a whole new neighborhood put in there, Orchard Road, and the trucks and the noise and the loading and the backup alarms and all that stuff was something that the neighbors really had a hard time with. And that's, as a result of that, those huge evergreens were planted in that fence. And now, I mean, after all these years, to see that those loading docks not used anymore and have it actually turn into green space, you know, it doesn't, you can't see it from Route 9, but the neighbors greatly benefit, I think.
Yes, they have,
compared
yeah.
to what was there before. Yeah, I was going westbound the other day, and I, you know, always keep an eye on the different projects. I was just blown away with the landscaping. I remember the big old white pines out there. I remember pretty much when they planted them, and then they, like you say, they got awful big and cut them all down. And the new landscaping is really impressive out there.
Yeah.
It's a great looking building, and the landscaping and the layout, and of course the stormwater improvements is really good.
The stormwater was hard to design, I have to say, because the groundwater is so high and because of all the, you know, the surrounding wetlands. And we have beaver problems out there, which finally looks like we got our arms around and handled, so to speak.
Yeah, if I remember right, the conservation people told me that the original design had water flowing uphill.
We did. It was a miracle, but we did have water going uphill, I believe, yeah.
So I know this is outside of our jurisdiction, but part of what your response tonight has may have people concerned with the freshness of the product. You said it's brought in there in the fall and it sits around all winter?
I think I must have misspoke. I think it must only be in there for a week or two at the most. I think that's probably what's going on. I mean, it's flying off the shelves. Yeah, but apparently that Baby Ray's barbecue sauce is very popular throughout the country. They make
Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Any questions or comments? Yes, sir. You have to get a microphone. You can go to the podium. Yeah, either way.
Or a mic here too, if you like.
Hi, Bob Kamenetz. I live on 10 Orchard Road, so we abut the north side of the property. I just wanted to just make sure I understood. So the north docks are being closed permanently? Or have been?
That's correct.
Okay, great. And what about traffic along the back there? Is that no trucks back there? It's just...
Trucks are not supposed to be back there. If they are, it's accidental.
Okay.
Because it's either a newbie operator that, for some reason, went by this large loading dock facility and didn't realize that's where they were supposed to go.
Because I remember as part of one of the zoning boards, one of the variances they granted, there was supposed to be no truck traffic back there at all.
Yes.
And so I just want to make sure that's continuing.
That's correct.
Okay.
Just the vehicles for the employees, the office employees that go to that reduced size parking lot that's still there.
I will say that for about maybe the past 3 months has been the most quiet 3 months since Ken's has moved in. So
Yeah.
Whatever what you're doing is working, so.
I think the construction is winding down as
Well, I
well.
mean, just, just the
Yeah.
closing of those docks has
Yeah,
been a big deal.
Yeah, good. That's
Thank you.
great. Good.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. And I'm not really that familiar with the site plan, or I just know this is a modification, so it's an opportunity to have a conversation and a request, which may not be, from what I understand, landscaping wasn't part of the site plan. So what our commission has been asking for and getting wonderful reception from the planning board and other project proponents is that in the past, when people said use native plants, they thought trees and shrubs. And, you know, the way the world is moving now is we need to be looking at less lawn. So if the lawn area is not specific for a traditional lawn use, like your employees are sitting there on picnic blankets and things like that, if there was a way to replace the lawn with native grasses or native ground covers, and you're just hearing this for the first time, and we're kind of at the tail end of it, but I would be remiss if we didn't make the request. And I'm hearing lots of great things about your landscaping and the noise, so, you know, I don't want to throw a, what's that, the monkey wrench in?
Monkey wrench into the
But-
works, into
but
the warehouse.
If there's, you know, so when you say you've hydro-seeded, I mean, that's removed pavement that you're putting, that's good, but if there's a way we could introduce or even make it additionally, have you heard of a bee lawn? Where you add wildflowers into it? Doesn't have to be a meadow, but there's many ways, and we'd be happy to send you some information on that.
I am familiar with that, and we did discuss what kind of ground cover to put out there. This will not be a fertilized lawn. It will be, you know, fescue, things that are drought tolerant. They don't need a lot of watering for the obvious reasons why bother. As you may or may not know, is that the entire south area between the warehouse and Route 9 is a large lawn of not of really anything other than fescues and rye that don't require a lot of, it's never watered, quite frankly. And there is some emergence of sedge and natural sort of wetland-related kind of areas where it does get a lot wet. So I think that over time, the seed mix here will succumb to the same kind of naturalization, or should I say, predominant species that are in the front lawn. Again, those that don't need to be watered and those that don't need to be taken care of and mowed only occasionally. They don't mow all the time out there. They let the grass grow. They let the wildlife forage throughout. These areas are a little bit tighter and smaller. But I do understand that they want to come in here. They want to truck product in and out. Really, what they want to do, and they're concerned about their image in the front. And I think they know a lot about it. This is sort of their backyard, and they're already making quite a few improvements in terms of indigenous landscape, in terms of along the wetland edges associated with the wetland filings. So I think that I'd love to see what you have. I'd be welcome to look at it and see if it's anything different. If it looks easier than if I can convince the Ken's Foods that it's easy, maybe perhaps we can make some. I can't make any promises in that regard.
So as a follow-up, if I may, I could email you through the town planner.
Be happy to see. I'd be happy to look at
Give you
that.
some suggestions. We're just, you know, even adding some, and one of the things we've been promoting is that we're talking about native plants for pollinators specifically, but there's great value in meadows, but there's also a way of landscaping without the messy meadow look. But it sounds like you're open to naturalization, and it sounds like a perfect place
Yeah.
for some. Just throwing in a few wildflower seeds
Yeah.
into your mix could be more beneficial than you can imagine at
Right.
no real cost and no maintenance upkeep increase. So I'll be happy to contact the town planner.
Be happy to receive that and suggest it to Ken's. I can't make any
understand.
promises, but I'd be happy to do that.
All right.
And I'll be your advocate for it.
And is lighting any part of this review tonight?
The lights are already installed.
Okay, so that's not part of the modification.
It is, but they're already installed.
So if you had to replace a light, there's a movement to move towards warmer LED lights, that there's real concern over human health and animal health with the blue LED lights. Also, the loss of our dark skies for many reasons. And there's actually a presentation at the library tomorrow night, follow up from what was presented here a few weeks ago, but it's on astrophotography, so it'll be fascinating, but it also talks about losing our dark skies and the impact. So if there's a way to, I don't know, if,
The new lights are LEDs. I don't know if they're the cool or the warm lights. Quite frankly, I don't know. Might be,
But that's a
but
done-
I think it maybe. I think perhaps that's something they could consider if they are the cool type that are the brighter, the more white lights, that they could transition if it doesn't impact safety out there in operations.
yeah, we have some information that safety can maybe even be better with the warmer lights because of the glare from the blue lights. You don't see things that are right in front of you because of the glare. We had a demo of that at a presentation here. I will also include that information. I guess you're not going to be doing any requirements, but it doesn't hurt to make the request. Thank you. And everyone come to me.
Anyone else? So, one of the things that the board can do tonight is to close the public hearing and vote to approve the modification. The planning board could also continue the public hearing to our next meeting, which is July 8th. If you think there's a benefit, or at least not a negative to that, and are able to come back with stronger commitments to the things that were brought up here tonight, then we could do that too. I think I'm leaning toward a stronger commitment based on your positive reaction to these, to the comments from the public and the board.
I don't think that, obviously, as you know, the work out there has already been done. And I think we're in the position where we should be as helpful as we can. And not that we wouldn't have been anyway, even if we had come prior to the work being done. But I think it'd be interesting to look at some alternatives for that green area back there, particularly.
So you'll come back with those, well, you'll
Yeah.
come back on the 8th, if the board votes in that to continue.
Yeah. Of
And,
course, our preference would be is the hearing would be closed, of course.
well, if we close the hearing, we can't accept any new information.
Right.
So we leave the hearing open. And, but obviously, prior to July 8th, you would submit these revisions, these reactions to the comments tonight.
Some response.
In writing, that the board would have, and hopefully feel comfortable enough so that at our next meeting, we could take a vote, and those things would be in writing, and everybody knows what we're gonna get.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That would be acceptable, yes.
Mr. Mills?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we continue the public hearing for 325 Turnpike Road, modification to a major site plan approval to July 8th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to continue the public hearing to July 8th, 7 PM. Any questions or comments? All in favor? We'll see you on the 8th. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Before we go to the next item on the agenda, we are must show that the record must show that we have another newly elected selectman who is in the audience tonight. Sam, you have to stand up because we made Marty stand up. So the record will also show that Marty was on time. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, 118, 120 Turnpike Road, major site plan approval. And also public hearing, 118, 120 Turnpike Road, lower impact development. I'll ask the town planner to read the public hearing notices.
This is the public hearing notice for major site plan approval and special permit for lower impact development for 118 to 120 Turnpike Road, Assessors Map 37, parcels 118-4 and 120-4. Per section 174-10 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, June 3rd, 2019, at 7:20 p.m. in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor, Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass., to consider the application of Stephen Cox, Curo Southborough LLC, regarding the property located at 118 to 120 Turnpike Road for major site plan approval. Per section 174-13.3 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, June 3rd, 2019, at 7:25 p.m. at the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor, Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass., to consider the application of Stephen Cox, Curo Southborough LLC, regarding the property located at 118 to 120 Turnpike Road for lower impact development special permit. These hearings concern a proposed parking garage with a footprint of 46,700 square feet with up to 503 parking spaces to be located within the existing rear parking area and associated site improvements at 118 to 120 Turnpike Road. Assessors Map 37, parcels 118-4 and 120-4, located in a highway, business, and residence A zoning district. Copy of the plans and application may be reviewed at the planning office at the Southborough Townhouse during normal business hours or on the planning board's web page, https://www.southborough.com/planning-board. Any person wishing to be heard on the proposed changes should appear at the time and place designated. Donald C. Morris, Chair, Planning Board. It's both in there.
Thank you. Mr. Cox, welcome back. True to your word, we've seen this project, not this project, but you indicated that you were going to regroup and come back, and here you are.
So we're back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Stephen Cox, I represent the ownership of I'm the managing member of the ownership entity for these two buildings. Yes, we're back. What we did in a nutshell is we terminated the discussions about building additional parking up the hill. The back, the green space, as you all know, maybe Marnie isn't quite up to speed, but the green space is also owned by us. It's zoned residential, and there's 8 acres there. And originally we were here thinking that the zoning code allowed us to build up the hill as accessory parking. We meet all the current parking requirements. It was determined that we could not. We could use a 30-foot buffer, which we are using now, but the rest of the parking is on our current lot, which is the commercial zoning. So the only thing we're using is the 30-foot buffer, which town council has agreed is appropriate. Why parking? Why are we here at all? We're here because the back building is now vacated. Hewlett-Packard was in there for 10 years. And the front building has some tenants that will be vacating at the end of the year. And parking has become a major issue in this area of Southborough, particularly these 3 office parks, if you will, as we go down the line. So what we are marketing. We have a very heavy marketing effort underway, and what we're proposing to do is add enough parking to satisfy the requests of the tenants that were in, touring. So what did we do? So we designed a parking deck. In the report, we wrote that there's 503 cars. It's true in the structure, including the base, there's 503 cars, but we're only adding 375 parking stalls. The base is the current parking that's there already. We're just putting it on top. So the addition is, an easy way to think about it is 3 levels of parking deck at 125 parking stalls per level. That's what we're adding. I think we've been extremely sensitive to the green space on the hill. We've left as much as we possibly could. I am personally a tree hugger, and so we're as sensitive as we could be about that, and we're interested in your thoughts. That'd be part one. Part two is in order to make the project, the 2 buildings, a little more working together, we're planning to improve the plaza area. There's currently a plaza area in between the 2 buildings. It's a typical, late 80s plaza. It's concrete and some plantings around a little roundabout. You can actually drive around it between the 2 buildings. So what we want to do is we want to improve that area. It is within the buffer zone, and we've been to conservation twice so far. We're actually pushing the improvements off of the detention pond a little bit and installing walkways, a plaza area, a fire pit. Tenants seem to want that kind, and tables and chairs. And that's sort of a summary of the project or projects. It's the plaza area and then the parking deck.
Vito, were you going to take us into more detail, or is that it for your presentation?
We can go into more detail if you like.
Okay,
kind
we'll
of-
do it that way then.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, just,
As you know, we don't have the Fuss and O'Neill
oh, it came in today.
today.
Yeah, but
Right, so
we'll,
we haven't seen them.
we'll get it for the next round.
Sure.
So just for kind of reference, overall site, Route 9's down here. There are the 2 buildings with parking kind of all around. The proposed garage would be in the back within that existing parking area. And then that plaza area Stephen was talking about is right in between the 2 buildings right in here. So the first thing is for the garage itself. You can look at the site plan. Sorry about that. And first off, this is a rendering the architects had done, just kind of showing the look of it. They're trying to break it up a little bit, not just your typical garage that you normally see. This is a view looking from right over in this direction from the abutter, and this is a view looking kind of from this direction. So they tried to add some features, dress it up, make it an amenity for the site. They've added some landscaping around, and we can get into that with the landscaping plans. I'm not sure if you have seen the landscaping as part of your submittal. It came in to us right as we were submitting, so we do have full landscaping plans that will go with the next round of.
Why don't we use that one board just for a moment so people can see it?
Okay. And so this is kind of just a quick rundown of landscaping that would be out there. This is a view looking straight on from this direction. So there would be screening all along the front, and then with some additional taller trees on this side and on this side. They are all native species, and we are using, the ground covers. They are flowering, and we're also using the flowering trees, trying to meet all the guidelines that and the goals that open space and the board has.
And just to point out in terms of screening, I don't know which rendering, this will show the existing, this is the corner, that would be southwest corner. These are the
A little bit
trees.
closer to the microphone.
This
please.
should be the southwest corner. These are the existing trees. There's lots of lots of trees in this hill across the whole, all along here. This corner is the key corner because that's where the construction is closest. And so these are we just want to do a rendering of the existing trees, and those heights are reasonably accurate. So those are left. So from up, I just drove Woodland again today. From up looking down, it's going to be hard to see this deck, if you see it at all.
Okay, and then to go through some of the engineering of it, we can go through the site plan quick. So basically, the garage will be located in the existing parking area. So the only new impervious is this strip right here, where we did encroach into the other zone by the 30 feet. And the reason we did do that is to line up the aisles within the parking garage with the existing aisles that are already out there for the proposed, for the existing parking. You know, it wouldn't be efficient if we had to shift everything over, you know, and rebuild the entire parking lot. So we did use that small encroachment there. So with this whole overall project, I think the increase is about 5,000 square feet of impervious area. So that's you know, obviously a vast improvement from what we had before with the, you know, the 3 levels of parking going up the hill. For drainage and stormwater management, what we did was we collected the roof deck and any new kind of surface features that we've created through the project, collected them and run them through a water quality structure prior to discharge to the existing pond. And that portion of the review was also reviewed by Fuss & O'Neill for conservation, and they found it acceptable, met all the stormwater standards. Once they get the revised plans for planning and issue a new letter, I'm sure they'll have the same conclusion. There was one question that came up as far as the interior floor drains, of how you treat that. And on the revised plans that you'll be getting, we've shown a oil gas separator, which takes the interior drains, separates gases, oils, and then the clear water goes to a tight tank and has to be pumped out periodically. That came up as a question because it can't go to the stormwater system and it can't go to your septic system. So since there's no sewer out here, you know, that is the solution. I think that was the same thing that was done on the Eversource parking garage that came through not that long ago. For traffic circulation, there was a letter from fire department that had asked that we check the turning radiuses for their fire truck. So we had checked that prior, but we can provide a exhibit that shows all the turning radiuses. But they can come in. We've modified these islands in here to allow the turning movements to get through and around and back out. They also need that for the loading docks, which are in this location. So trucks will come in, back in the loading dock, and can make this turning movement to go out. Previously, they would come around and come up through this area and down. So that has been checked, but we'll provide a exhibit just kind of showing those movements with the fire truck and the bus 45 to go through there. And we also wanted to show that area of open space in the back. With this new plan, would actually increase the open space that's being donated to the town. So this is right now the current conservation land. This is down here, and this is the parcel right here. So this whole back triangle, you know, now we can donate basically all of it. So the town does get more land. This would be the proposed line right there, we'd strike. And we only held it right there rather than closer, just so that we can have proper zoning setbacks in the future, and that there's a swale that runs here and right along this kind of edge, and we wanted access to go up to be able to maintain that in the future. We don't want the town to have to be responsible for anything. So basically from here on up, it's a little over 6 acres, and like I said, it joins right up to the town's conservation land. All right. The only last thing was site lighting. And we did provide a site lighting plan. And essentially, the only lighting is going to be on the top deck. I think there's 3 light poles that go across the top deck. They did show that there'd be 0-foot candles at the property line. And we did discuss, I think last time there was a discussion about what happens at night. And we've been discussing that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So this ramp is not a, this parking deck is not a public facility. It's part of the office complex. So it's going to be open, if you will, only during the same hours as the office is. And our business hours are 8 a.m. to 6:30 on weekdays. So those are the days that the ramp will be, in quotes, open. And, you know, the people obviously work 24/7 now. They do in this building as it is, but you don't need the extra parking for those hours. So we're satisfied we can, in quotes, close the ramp at the same hours you need a card key to get into the building.
Very good. I'll open it up to the board. The questions tonight or comments will be, you know, based on our limited time to review this and more information to come. Mr. Mills?
So can you explain, when you say you're gonna close the ramp, is it a gate actually gonna close it
We'll
off?
have a gate, yeah, definitely for, we don't want people parking in there overnight.
So, but is there gonna be, people gonna have a card so that
Have a
if they
card key.
did?
Yeah, just like right now, after 7, with a card, you get into the building.
Okay, so you could still get in and out, because I mean, I've worked at enough places
Right.
that have parking lots or parking garages and know that sometimes people leave their car overnight, they go
Yeah,
out to drinks with someone and they leave their car there and then
then they shouldn't have a card, right?
whatever.
back.
But, I mean, the
Right.
reality is
No,
they'll come
you're
back much
exactly
later and,
correct. So that, it's
or
all.
Christmas outing, whatever.
Right,
That's
it
all.
would be all part of the project, if you will,
Okay.
including the lighting on the upper deck. The lighting doesn't have to be on, you know, 24 hours a day.
I'm glad you brought up lighting, because I know you were around earlier, I know there'll be a comment that'll come up later, is just lighting in general. There is a wave to go forward with a lesser blue light going forward, so and we
We're
don't have to get
actually-
into it tonight.
No, well, actually, just so you know, where we would do that anyway. I've actually read about that independently, and I actually agree with it.
Okay.
So that's done.
And then the other piece too, is just with the native pollinating ground cover.
Yep.
Because I assume you're gonna be digging up a lot around it, and any ways you put it in, if you make a native grass,
Absolutely.
flowering, pollinating.
Yeah, there should be
type.
an exhibit. Maybe
So,
it didn't get printed, but
Again,
in your
not that we have to
booklet.
go in depth. but-
Right. In your booklet, those are all shown.
And then, just for the public again, so the reason for the garage is because the new tenants are looking to put, a much denser population in the building than before.
That's what everyone's doing. Believe me, we wouldn't spend half again as much money on a garage that we did for the buildings unless we thought it was highly important. And so, yes, you hear about these creative offices, you hear about open office plans, collaboration, that kind of thing. Even benching, where you take like a large, long table and people are just lined up on either side. So we've toured, let me say, serious tenants with names you would be proud to have in Southborough. And I can say all but maybe of 7 tours, all but 2 have asked for a minimum of 5-to-1 parking, 5 parking stalls per 1,000 square feet. This plan gets us 5.8 parking stalls per 1,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Mrs. Houlihan.
Can I please defer to the end?
Mr. Stein.
What's the height of the building?
So the overall height would be 45 feet. I can show you using this one. So to the top of this stair tower here would be 45 feet from the ground.
As long as you're up there, there's a border line cutting through.
Oh,
What is that?
this one here?
No, up, that one.
This one, that is the zone line between highway business highway and residence A. And then there's a 30-foot setback that a use in the business highway is allowed to go into that by 30 feet. So this is the actual zone line right here. And then the second one is a 30-foot offset.
And there's looks like a wetland area.
Yeah, this one here.
What's your plans as far as submitting these drawings to Conservation Commission?
So conservation, we submitted just before we submitted here. And the timing of the meetings, we've actually been there twice now. And right now, they seem to be okay with this proposal. There weren't any major comments that came out of it. And at the end of the last meeting, we're basically kind of waiting to come here. We need comments from DEP still. But as far as they were concerned, just basically because the only work in the buffer is this right there, and then some repaving here, and then the patio work. We were able to move everything outside the buffer, so they were pretty good with that.
Just to go back to Mr. Mills's question, the parking garage is going to be closed at night, and the reason for that is to not illuminate it?
Well, no, the reason for that is we really don't want people parking in the ramp 24 hours. We don't want them putting a second car in the ramp. We don't want them doing anything like that. I think an added benefit of doing that, however, is that it doesn't have to be illuminated.
I'm a little concerned about that from a just public safety perspective. To have no illumination in the parking garage seems.
It was no illumination. Clearly, we'd have to have whatever we need for security purposes. I mean, right now, that's sitting on a parking lot that's lit.
Okay. I think that's an open question for me at this point.
Perfect.
Yeah, because you could have interior lighting on the inside and then limited on the deck if that's something that, you know, you could have security lighting inside that wouldn't illuminate out really, and then just some limited on the top.
That sounds good, for sure. And so for me, the open questions are that and the conservation.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Luttrell.
Thank you. And thank you for the open space. That's fabulous. You said a landscape plan is coming, because I haven't seen one.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
It's right here. We got it in right after we submitted, and rather than keep providing more information, we just figured we'd get it in. There's going to be revisions,
Okay.
so we're just going to include it with the next. But it's here, we've had it, but this is basically, you can't really review from there, but this is
we
the
don't
plan.
have-
They're using all natives and, you know, trying to fill in through all the new landscape islands.
We definitely have it. We don't have it on the board?
Yep, I do. I got that one and
So these are the plantings,
this one.
and this is just, you know, from up
Yeah.
above
Mhm.
the plan. So these are the islands that are added, sorry. These are the islands that are added. We're fixing the islands over here and here. This planting you can't really envision. These are additional trees being added for this retaining wall. This is along here, they grow to 20 feet, they start at 14, and the rest of these are the native grasses that he's designed.
Okay.
Now, if that package didn't get in your package, it definitely will next time.
Okay.
Your package.
A question on the development impact statement. Number 16, acknowledge that there's a footpath from this to the conservation land. But number 30 said that there would be no access, so there won't be an access after this is complete?
There will be access, it would be maintained.
Okay.
If it was misstated in there, I can take a look at it, but there is an access right here. It goes kind of off the end of the parking lot, there's a path that comes up and around and connects up in here. And they maintain that.
We did
Okay.
that when we did the upgraded septic system, and we're just gonna approve that when it's perfectly walkable, people.
Mhm.
You need the microphone. People are
Yep.
missing it.
Yeah, people
Sorry.
use it all the
They
time.
are gonna keep it.
Yeah.
People use it all the time. I
Yeah.
use it when I'm there, but we'll improve it just a little bit. We have P-rock right now that's there, and it's a little bit eroded, so when this is finished, it'll be more walkable,
Okay.
but it won't be a sidewalk.
No.
Right, it would just stay, a walking path.
In the reason why no rain garden is because you're using already existing structures?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's more, it isn't technically a redevelopment, but it's more like a redevelopment where, to do a rain garden or something, we would have to clear vegetated areas to do that, and that kind of defeats some of the purpose.
That's not low impact. When you were at Concom, did they express a desire to hold that open space? Did they mention anything about the open space
I think it was intended to go towards them to be combined up
with the rest of it?
Yeah, with the rest of it. We can have a more specific discussion at the next hearing with them. I don't know what your preference is. I would assume it was just
That
going to
would
be
be
combined in.
that would be my preference.
That was the assumption, kind of. I don't think we ever actually specifically talked about it.
There was a nodding, if you
Yeah.
will,
Okay.
but it really wasn't in-depth discussion about how that's all handled. And, we would like to have an opinion too about just how it happens tax-wise and the rest as well.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
We got a ways to go, but good start. Open it up to the public. Any questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Houlihan. Sorry about that.
Thanks. So in just reading a couple of things, so I know we just got the Fuss and O'Neill letter, but I just reviewed it, and I would say the one thing that created a little bit of concern for me was the clearing of approximately 20,000 square feet of trees, which is about a half acre.
Right.
So my worry is just we have sensitive soil and it's a hill, and I've seen it happen in residential when people clear, and it's unexpected. So it's the Conservation Commission and how we're handling that.
So that's a perfect question. I just was telling Vito, you're going to hear about this.
Okay.
I don't exactly know how they came up with that number, but if you take 30 feet, which is the part we're encroaching, and you just go the length of the ramp, you probably get real close to that. And so it's really not true. If you went out there today, you're not really clearing all that. You're working in that area, but it's not necessarily neutering the hill at all. And that really doesn't come clear. It does a little bit in that light green.
Yeah, the light green
Retaining
is the
wall goes
limit of
in.
clearing.
Yeah.
And the tree line itself kind of goes up
Goes up, right.
right
exactly.
in there. The most trees are right in here, and then there's a row of trees in here, and then some over in there. I think they just took the whole limit of clearing and said that.
I do too. I think
We
that's
call it
what-
clearing, but a lot of it's actually grass.
And it is grass now, but it is on a hillside.
Yeah, but
Okay, so
they're-
that will be addressed in this next rendition, and then
Yeah.
it's something that I do think the Conservation Commission, just as we think about what the role is and how we work together, we do have sensitive soil here, so it's
Yes.
my concern that if there is any clearing and you're on a hill, that are we accommodating the water flow accurately?
Yeah, we'll address that in our response to them.
Definitely will.
We can quantify, the number of trees actually removed, because we did locate them all with the sizes and the species, so we can quantify the number to be removed and, measures to protect the hillside and erosion controls and all that.
That would be very helpful.
Definitely.
And then my only other comment was just to Mr. Stein's comment about illumination of a parking garage, I spend most of my days in parking garages in Cambridge, and they are motion-sensitive lighting, which is, if a car comes in, then the lights go on. But it's a matter of public safety, but also just let's, be technologically advanced, and let's try and, not keep it on 24 hours, but as you think about that lighting for the next rendition.
That's a good
I
idea.
was actually thinking about the benefit to the neighborhood, that the upper level wouldn't have to be lit.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Down so you can see.
Go ahead, Karina.
Vito, I just want to point out that it's tough for the audience to understand rendered plans like this if I don't have copies of those colored site
Okay.
plans. And also, are you showing the limit of disturbance on the actual site plan?
Yep.
You are?
Yeah, so that's the same,
Right,
plan, I
but we
just
don't
colored
have
it
the
up.
colored rendering.
yeah, I just
so
colored it.
when you're pointing it out, they can't see the light green and all that. So
Okay.
maybe when you, next time around, if you do have,
Colored ones, we can
and
get
if
them on
you
the
give them
screen.
to me in PDF, then everyone can understand.
Yes.
Thanks.
Are you familiar with the parking garage on the Framingham Southborough line? It's across the street from On Thank Lane.
No.
It's a Genzyme. Genzyme, we get the parking garage and Framingham gets the buildings.
Building,
Yes.
yeah. Right.
So, that garage, I believe, was considered somewhat of a success in its layout and design relative to the traffic flow
Mhm.
and the headlights.
Okay.
The way the headlights are blocked out from leaving the building. So we have the site plan here, the approved site plan for that parking garage. Well, you're welcome to look at it,
Sure.
or even take a ride down there. The landscaping around that parking garage is substantial,
Okay.
and the way that the building was built and designed was sensitive to the interior lighting and also to the headlights of the vehicles.
Perfect, we'll definitely look at it.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Hi, Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission, and I'm also on the Stewardship Committee, which has oversight of the management of the Breakneck Hill Conservation Land that this abuts, and both the Stewardship Committee and the Open Space Preservation Commission discussed and reviewed these plans at our last meeting, and I have to say, yahoo! Compared to the parking lot that had first been proposed, and you were kind enough to go out and flag that, and as you were walking down a trail on the conservation land, what you would feel was the woods, there's a stone wall you'd be walking next to, and immediately adjacent would be a parking lot with lighting. And if I could have designed this after we talked, it's like you gave us everything we were asking for, so thank you. I know it's a parking deck. I'm not as familiar with the engineering, but we looked at the contours, and you're like a little bit below surface. You did exactly what we talked about. It's sort of put into the hill, so it's not too tall. Obviously, you can't have a roof garden because you don't have a roof, which also cuts down on the height. So visibly, I don't think we're going to be able to see it from the conservation land, except for the lighting, which we're, again, going to ask, and you're saying you're already doing the non-blue LED light. The Stewardship Committee was specifically, and I don't know if the letter got sent out, but had wanted to encourage the trail, which benefits your what do you call them? Tenants and people, but it benefits the town as well. So we're happy to see that that's ongoing. There were some other things, and I really need to put it in a letter, and I didn't, but there's an area that you're taking out some hardscaping and putting in some native plantings. I think you said an existing patio or something you're doing something about. That sounded good.
Yes, between the buildings, correct.
And also, there was one other area in the far corner of the parking garage on the north or south, on the western side of the garage, where you have a cut that's like a 2-to-1. And we know at our last discussion on the native plant, I didn't see a landscape plan, so I don't know what the plan is there, but we'd been told, well, you can't use native grasses on a steep slope. But I did look at some of the things that New England Wetland Plants has, and they're specifically for steep slopes, and one of the plants was pussy willow, which is a highly desirable plant for a rare species of bumblebee at Breakneck Hill. And I will send that information with the next, before your next meeting with a letter, but it's something that's used. It might be not in your plans. I don't think it's a large area that's got that slope, and so I don't think it would be way exorbitantly expensive, probably more expensive than seeding, but we really don't want the non-native grasses, and that's, the native grasses, we've been told, take too long to get established, so there's other methods you can do.
That's perfect, because we have something, I don't know which he has there that is, but we're happy to look at that.
And I'd be happy to get the color renditions and the landscape plan
Absolutely.
too, but really, and I haven't even gotten to the 6 acres of open space, so, you know, this is a win-win. You had a desire and a need for more parking, and you left and came back with something that's, you know, aside from the engineering, which I know nothing about, and the height from Route 9 and that, it just, from our perspective, from Breakneck Hill, it's marvelous, so thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions or comments? So, our next meeting is on July 8th, and we're positioned to continue this.
Perfect.
Thought it was. So our next meeting is July 8th, and we're at a point where we would continue these public hearings, one for the major site plan approval, and one for the lower impact development. We would continue them to July 8th, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll have some progress, sufficient progress for in a month.
Yep.
Okay. No, that's fine.
7:20, right?
Yep, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mills.
I make a motion, we continue the public hearing for 118, 120 Turnpike Road, major site plan approval for 7:20 on July 8th, and continue the public hearing for 118, 120 Turnpike Road, lower impact development, lid, for 7:25 on July 8th.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. We'll see you on the 8th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is another public hearing. This one, actually, 2 public hearings. We're gonna, because we're after the posted time, we're able to read both public hearing notices at the same time. 144 Turnpike Road, modification of major site plan approval, and another public hearing, 154 Turnpike Road, modification of major site plan approval. I'll ask the town planner to read the public hearing notices.
Let me just get rid of these. Let's see. No, that's not the right one. No, that's not the right bear with me. I just want to load this so I don't have to do it in a minute. Okay. I lost all my speed. Okay. Where'd the other one go? Here it is. Okay. The public hearing notice for modification of major site plan approval for 144 Turnpike Road, Assessors Map 37, Lot 2, per Section 174-10 of the Southborough zoning code. The planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, June 3rd, 2019, at 8 p.m. in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor, Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. To consider the application of William DePietri, 144 Turnpike Road, LLC, regarding the property located at 144 Turnpike Road in Southborough, Mass. For modification of a major site plan approval. This hearing concerns changes to the major site plan approval granted by the Planning Board on June 7th, 1996, entitled White's Corners Office Building for 144 Turnpike Road, Assessors Map 37, Lot 2, located in the Business Highway Zone District. Site modifications include a driveway connection to adjacent property at 154 Turnpike Road and associated parking and landscaping changes. Copy of the plans and application may be reviewed at the planning office at the Southborough Townhouse during normal business hours or on the planning board's webpage at www.southboroughtown.com, planning board dashboard. Planning dashboard. Any person wishing to be heard on the proposed changes should appear at the time and place designated. And the public hearing notice for modification of a site plan approval for 154 Turnpike Road, Assessors Map 37, Lot 3. Per Section 174-10 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, June 3rd, 2019 at 8:05 p.m. in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor, Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. To consider the application of William DePietri, 154 Turnpike Road, LLC, regarding the property located at 154 Turnpike Road in Southborough, Mass. For modification of major site plan approval. This hearing concerns the changes to the major site plan approval granted by the Planning Board on January 7th, 2003, entitled The Crossings at White's Corner for 154 Turnpike Road, at Assessors Map 37, Lot 3, located in the Business Highway Zoning District. Site modifications include a driveway connection to adjacent property at 144 Turnpike Road and associated parking and landscaping changes. Copy of the plans and application may be reviewed at the planning office at the Southborough Townhouse during normal business hours or at the planning board's webpage, southboroughtown.com, planning dashboard. Any person wishing to be heard on the proposed changes should appear at the time and place designated.
Thank you. So I'll ask the town planner to give us the background on, and the history leading up to this, these public hearings. Then we'll open it up to Capital Group, Mr. Ruiz, and then we'll open it up to the public first, and then the board.
On May 9th, 2019, Capital Group Properties, represented by Dan Ruiz, who's present, and Mr. DePietri, provided a submission of plans and an application package, which I reviewed. There were some deficiencies, so they supplemented the plans, and on May 14th, we received supplemental submission with plans dated May 14th, 2019. On May 15th, the applications, both for 144 and 154, I want to clarify, it's basically identical in the process, were filed with the town clerk. The information was submitted to our engineering reviewing consultant, Fuss & O'Neill. Legal ads were published in the newspaper on May 20th and May 27th. Butter notifications were mailed out, and green card return receipts and also the white mailing receipts were received last Thursday as required. The information was distributed to the various town departments. We received town comments from the fire department and conservation. We also received Friday afternoon, when the townhouse was closed, but officially this morning, review comments from Fuss & O'Neill on both submissions, which were submitted to the applicant and also the planning board today. So I don't believe they've had a chance to respond and the planning board may not have had a chance to review them. And that's where we are.
Could you go over the conservation, fire? And fire departments.
Yes.
Defer on that. Go over the, sorry, my mic wasn't on. Conservation Commission comments dated May 21st, and the fire department comments dated May 23rd.
Just one comment. We just received the conservation comments today.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, I was looking through and updating my notes, and when I noticed we hadn't sent you the conservation comments. But you did receive the fire
Yeah,
department.
no, I did
Okay.
receive them. I just haven't really had a chance to really go through them.
Okay, understood. The Town of Southborough Conservation Commission on May 21st, 2019, prepared by Conservation Agent, prepared comments that relate to both 144 and 154 Turnpike Road site plan modifications. These comments may not all encompass the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, but simply noted during my review of the submitted plans. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Item number 1, DEP number 290-402 has not received a certificate of compliance for the construction of 144 Turnpike Road and should be closed out with the Commission. The plan labeled Existing Conditions Plan 144 Turnpike Road does not accurately convey what is currently on site, as the driveway connection is already in place. The plan should either be relabeled with another name or a true Existing Conditions Plan created. Number 3, there is no Existing Conditions Plan for 154 Turnpike Road. Number 4, there appears to be a 20-foot wide water easement labeled on the submitted plans in which the driveway connection would impact. Approval should be gained from the appropriate agency or department prior to the construction of the driveway or conditioned in approval. On 154 Turnpike, there should be an ADS infiltration pipes along the area where the driveway connection should be. A board may want to consider an engineered certification to be provided indicating no impact to this infiltration system and that it's functioning as approved following the construction. If the main concern is direct access to Breakneck Hill Road from 144 Turnpike Road, the board may want to consider adding additional posts and chains across the driveway for option 3 that would be closed when chains for 144 Turnpike parking overflow are open. Last comment, because this site plan was prior to the adoption of the Stormwater and Erosion Control Bylaw, no stormwater management permit exists, but an operation and maintenance plan should have been approved with the original site plan approval. The applicant should demonstrate that they are in compliance with their operation and maintenance plan, including inspections and best management practice, cleanings, and upkeep. Those were the Conservation Commission comments from the agent. Actually, those were from the Conservation Agent. The Fire Department provided a memo on May 23rd regarding both 144 and 154 Turnpike Road from Fire Chief Stephen Achilles regarding access. Number 1, all turns, access, and cul-de-sac shall be designed to accommodate the vehicles to the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials Bus-45 design standard. In bold, the comment was the proposed plan does not indicate appropriate compliance for turning radius. Number 2, all drainage, culverts, septic system components, and underground utilities and chambers shall be designed to AASHTO H20 and HS20 weight loading standards. Number 3, access along all streets and driveways shall need a minimum height clearance of 13 feet 6 inches, according to Massachusetts Code of Regulation 527 CMR Chapter 18, to allow for proper ingress and egress of fire apparatus and emergency vehicles. Number 4, all access roads and driveways shall be a minimum of 20 feet wide. Massachusetts Code Regulation 527 CMR Chapter 18, highlighted was the proposed plan indicates 18-foot wide. Access gates, highlighted here, the proposed plan identifies the installation of jersey barriers and metal posts with chains. The fire department requires additional information on means of ensuring access through driveway. Regarding address, not applicable. Building numbering, not applicable. Driveways, not applicable. Fire department sprinkler connection, a dry standpipe shall be provided in stairwells on, this is a standard comment for usual building structures. For lower and upper levels for firefighting purposes, the numbered specific locations can only be determined upon submittal and review of structure floor plans. The connection shall be lower level fire apparatus, the standpipe connection be, that's for buildings. Fire lanes, not applicable. Fire hydrants, not applicable. Fire sprinklers, not applicable. Parking permits, not applicable. Response times for medical, not applicable. Water supply, not applicable. Other comments, not applicable. All right, and there were questions regarding potentially something to do with the light fixtures on the properties as well. And that's what I have.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Dan Ruiz, how are you tonight?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, welcome back, and you're on.
Okay. So, as we all know, we are here because of a driveway that was...
Take the mic with you.
A driveway that was installed right in this area. So this is the aerial of the properties. 144 is the bigger parcel. 154 is the smaller parcel. 144 Turnpike Road is a 99,758 square foot multiple office tenant building. And the percent of the building that's leased is 83%. And the parking spaces that is provided on site for 144 is currently 373 parking spaces. What is required by the bylaw is 349. 154 Turnpike Road, that's a 20,000 square foot building with multiple uses within the building. The percentage of the building that's leased is 94%. The building provides 148 parking spaces on the parcel, and that includes the garage where the employees park. By the bylaw, it is required 119 parking spaces.
I just want to add that included in the application was a table of parking calculations. They're posted on the website under the public hearing notice so that you can see this parking calculation.
So as part of our 3 options that we've laid out, the first option is how it stands today in existing, which is with the driveway, full access to allow overflow parking from 154 to park in this area down here, which is never full. It would allow for on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday nights, the Ola and Tomaso's have a lot of people that will park in this area, and currently it's blocked off. But before we had it blocked off by the Jersey barriers, people were parking in this area, which allowed for no parking on Breakneck Hill, which a lot of people were doing prior to the driveway being installed. So option 1 would be to leave it as it is, which obviously it's not the best option. The abutters are opposed with that, and there is some cut-through traffic from 144 going this out through the driveway to avoid the turnaround all the way up Route 9. The second option we have is to install Jersey barriers continuously across the parking lot. This allows the most flexibility in case we do need to decrease the amount of parking for the overflow of 154, and will allow us to be able to increase if we need be for 144. And the third option that we have is granite curbing along where the parking spaces are, and 4 6 by 6 inch granite posts with a chain across to block off any access from 144 to the driveway through 154 to prevent the cut-through traffic. And that's it.
Very good, thank you. I'll open it up to the public first. Anyone from the public would like to speak? Grab the mic and...
Hal Key, 6 Mount Vickery Road. Frankly, I don't know why we're here tonight, okay? The information provided to us says there are 28 excess parking spaces already available at 154 Turnpike Road. And you are then asking with 2 of your 3 plans, option 2 and option 3, for 46 more. And we have not seen any justification that we need those, except you're saying there's parking on Breakneck Hill Road, but there's something wrong here. Either these numbers are wrong, okay, or something about the building is being used differently than it was planned. But the way this looks, we should not need any more parking. We have excess parking already. So can someone explain that to me, why we need that extra parking?
Did you want to respond to that, Dan?
Yeah. So the tenants in 154 Turnpike Road, which is Ola, it's a Mexican restaurant, and Tommaso's, which is a Italian restaurant, they have been complaining about parking. There's not enough parking in this area, and the parking lot gets full around dinner time, lunchtime, and people are actually driving around for a while trying to find parking, and they're losing customers. So we want to increase the amount of parking allowed for 154 so that we're not having that issue. And no one is parking on Breakneck Hill Road.
I think the question is, why aren't you using the garage?
So it is being used by employees. I said that in the earlier presentation.
Mary Jane Giacalone, 30 Breakneck Hill Road. First of all, since they've closed it off, the traffic on Breakneck Hill Road has been vastly better. I haven't had to stay at a red light 3 times ever since it was closed off. Also, I have gone by and taken pictures of the area where supposedly employees park. However, it's always closed. So you never see any coming out of there. I think Code Red parks a lot in the front because about 5 o'clock people start to leave. And I've been walking down there. It's an easy walk to go there. I'm not sure that letting traffic out from 144 into 154 is going to help because it's going to be really hard getting out, or people are going to be going in the opposite direction. And we already have people walking on the street, and it's a very narrow road. And it's dangerous, and the traffic does increase. Apparently, there was some traffic on the street, as we know of, maybe once, and that really was it. So I'm not sure how to justify all of that. And in terms of traffic issues, there is something posted up there saying no turn left except if you're a local. I don't know how anyone can keep that going. What I would suggest is that it either stays closed and think of what my husband talked about the last time was a valet for Ola or for Tommaso's, and then it could go over into the other parking lot and it could be controlled that way. Or if you wanted to open it up to the other side, I suppose you could look at taking part of the parking lot away from the area by Tommaso's and putting in areas where you can turn left, you can go straight, and you can go right, so that traffic doesn't back up. You know, those are my only considerations, but I really don't know that we need to increase the parking at all, because we haven't seen any stress since then. And I've been going down and counting spaces because I'm crazy. That's it.
Anyone else?
It's Caroline Agababian from 18 Breckneck Hill Road. I mean, Mr. Luis, you mentioned about the parking on the Breckneck Hill Road. Do you live around the area?
I do not.
Okay. I live right on the corner. I have never, ever seen a parking car on that Breckneck Hill Road. And I drive there almost every single time, many times. So I'm trying to figure out your justification regarding the parking on the Breckneck Hill Road. I yet to see. My daughter's wedding, it was on Saturday. I went to Ola, I went to Tommaso's, and I said, I will go, we're going to have guests, and we need parking lot. It was on Saturday. They said, absolutely, we have a lot of parking, you guys can use it. So I'm still trying to figure out the parking issue. And we go to the restaurants, we go to that area, we go to the Starbucks. I've never, ever had any issue with parking. I need the justification for
What time?
different times. Dinner time, morning time, lunch time, every time. I can walk to that area, and I keep monitoring it. I have never, ever seen any parking issue. So if that's your justification, I don't see any reasons for the board to grant that, because there is no justification for that. Unless people want to, everybody wants to park right in front of absolutely there is not going to be enough parking spot if everybody wants to be parking in front of it and just walk right to either the Ola's or Tommaso's, because the capacity that those two restaurants have cannot accommodate that. So we can walk about a couple of minutes to get to that park, to the restaurant. There is no justification. I've been monitoring it. There is no way I have seen once, even once, that there has been a parking on the Breckneck Hill Road. Thank you.
Yes, Freddie.
Hi, Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission, and in reference to our concerns about native plants and the lighting that impacts our native insects, where this area cut-through was made was a landscaped area in the past, so we would, if it were to be allowed to stay as pavement, if it fits in with the requirements of your site plan modification, we'd request that a like-sized area of the lawn area be replanted in natives as mitigation or as some sort of compensation for the removal of the landscape. I'm not recommending that you allow that, but if it's to stay the cobblestones, that was one of the things we know it's not a new site plan, but you changed the old one, so it seems like it's a fair request. The other one is, we had heard that, and again, we're not engineers, so I have no idea what was in the original plan, but we heard that the original lighting did not meet the requirements of the decision, and some modification was made, and if that could be looked at, and if it in fact did not meet the original decision, could this be a time to make the modifications to have no blue LED lights and the proper, what are those called? The shade, the cut-off fixtures. I don't know if it's true or not. I just have been, people have called me and told me that they thought they weren't installed properly and there was maybe some painting done or something. Not an engineer, I have no idea, but just something to look at, and if in fact that's just a rumor, that could be alleviated, and if it's not a rumor and they weren't properly installed, if that could be something to be considered as mitigation. And then, as a private citizen, I just want to say, driving in there, I almost got T-boned, because if you come in off of Breakneck Hill Road and you pull in behind on the parking lot where that red is,
Yep.
And you go straight, see the parking spaces? It makes sense that you would just drive straight in to pull into a parking space. But there was a car going really pretty fast, and you couldn't, there were cars parked on both sides of the opening. Didn't see a car coming out, and they didn't slow down, they didn't stop, and there's no sight view. So if there was any reason you were going to look at allowing this, I think you have to take a very, concentrated look at the site views, because you can't see cars entering the parking lot coming out of there. And if you're going straight ahead to pull in, somebody's going to get hit, because I almost did. So, and in either case, I'm not recommending you do that. I'm just saying, if it is allowed, that the native plant replication be required, that the lights be looked at, and the sight line of those spaces need to be looked at.
Good evening. Paul Dyer from 17 Breakneck Hill Road. First of all, I'm glad to see the numbers on parking. It shows that both sites have sufficient parking for the usage at this time. My concern is that if there is a swapping of parking spaces that is planned, that the office building, if ownership ever splits, will be deficient on their parking. So that shouldn't be allowed. There's no reason, the sites he doesn't have to keep both these sites. He could sell one. So if that is the case, that should be in consideration. The parking on Breakneck Hill Road, if that was ever seen, that was seen probably at a Christmas party or something like that, where people don't park legally anyway. It's almost like parking at the church. First one out, first one home. So if that ever happened, I think that would be more of a public safety concern. And if a restaurant which serves alcohol has people parking on the street, they should be taking care of that themselves. If we are to allow a division, leave that, well, first of all, the opening between the two lots was not legally done. So now we're being asked to, as some of these options, to put curbing in, granite posts in, and chains. They'll be managed by the same group that illegally put this pass-through in the first place. It doesn't make sense. We're going to forget about this. It's just going to happen. You're going to unlock it one day for the convenience of the office staff. I understand that both properties have to survive, but I do think that the Giacalonis came up with a great idea that maybe not valet parking, but we've seen it at other restaurants in other areas, additional parking, an arrow that can go down in front of the 144 and park alongside, close off that entranceway, and just allow the extra parking to go into the 144 parking lot. Okay? That way, sites can stay the way they are. Everything else that we're talking, all these conditions we're talking about, can be returned to what they were existing prior to this, and we can all move ahead. At this time, we are seeing a lot of people walking. A lot of people from this office park enjoy those streets. Okay, walking up and down during the daytime, getting their exercise. That's what Southborough is about. That's what a scenic way is about. And if we can just put this back to the way it was, put some signs in. If you want to share the ownership and offer parking alongside where Starbucks is on the 144 lot, that might suffice. But otherwise, I think we're just spinning our wheels here. I really hope, I appreciate what the board has said in the past, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Frank Giacalone, 30 Breakneck Hill Road. Paul's concerns were my concerns, that they put this road in illegally, and no one was watching. Well, you know, these folks, three of them anyway, were three households that were here in 1996, 23 years ago. We fought for this, and they probably thought we forgot, you know. Now, 23 years from now, I don't know if I'm gonna be around, but we don't want to take that chance. If you are going to have access there, you've got to put in a structure, a strong wall that they can't climb over, because what we saw when it was open, people going in there, parking there, going into the office building, cutting through the, you know, the barriers, just walking through. So, you know, to put up a fence that will require them to walk all the way around might discourage some of that, if you're gonna do that. I don't think it's necessary. Frankly, I think this whole parking on Breakneck Hill safety issue, I don't know where it came from. Well, I think there was one fella who lives up on Davis Road, the other end of the hill, who claimed he saw it. We all live right there. We have never seen parking in that. That area is where the curve comes in. They'd be crazy to park there, you know? So I really, you know, we really appreciate, you know, you listening to us. Breakneck Hill is a beautiful country road. It has changed in 23 years. We have a lot of kids now, a lot of young kids biking, walking down, teenage kids walking down to the ice cream shop down there. And, you know, it's dangerous to increase the traffic, you know, just because someone can't go a half a mile up, turn around, and go home. It doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Go ahead, yes.
Mr. Morris, members of the board, Thaddeus J. Soule, 25 Mount Vickery Road, and former employee at 144 Turnpike Road. There's no need for additional access to this particular parking lot. Parking is sufficient. Access is sufficient. As somebody who walks Mount Vickery Road on a daily basis, I think it's in the board's purview to say what was initially planned was sufficient and that no additional changes were needed. Thank you.
Anyone else? You can have, we'll have second chances because we're going to open it up to the planning board. Mr. Mills.
So, thank you for the presentation, and I guess for the options as well, although I think there are other options that, based on the feedback, you're probably going to need to take a second look at. Yep. You know, it appears, you know, I worked at a lot of office buildings and everything, and I know what I would do, right? If there wasn't the access, I'd park at 154. Leave my car there all day, walk over, do my work, come back, and drive out the other way. So your parking problem might actually be the office people parking in there causing the problem. So I don't know if you've looked at, you know, monitoring the cars that are sitting there all day long or anything like that. You know, it's up to you, but that might be, you know, part of the problem.
Okay.
You know, I think piggybacking on what one of the residents said, a sign that simply said for overnight parking for the restaurants, I totally get. We want to keep the businesses in there, and I like them both. But if there was a sign that said overflow parking, just go down, take your next right, and feel free to go in the parking. You know, keep it lit, and have a nice walkway, not driveway, for them to come over and have it lit is completely reasonable. You know, the other piece too, I'd look at opening up the garage more, make sure the red code people are parking down there, and it's actually being utilized. Every time, I mean, I don't know how to get down there, but people keep showing pictures of it completely empty or storage being put down there and no one parking. So until, my position currently is until I know that that is completely full of cars, I don't see a need to open it up, especially since the original approval said that there would be no access to the other building to go through.
Okay.
Is my stance at this point. And the only other thing to solve the question of the parking on Breakneck Hill, I don't know, Karina, if you could ask the police department if they've had any complaints prior to this evening of parking on Breakneck Hill on that corner as overflow, because that would be the only data I could use to justify it, again, prior to this evening. That's all I have.
Mrs. Houlihan.
Thanks, thank you. So I'm new to the planning board, so I just want to ask the question, what problem are we trying to solve for? So my understanding is that when the project was approved in '96, there was a very clear no access. The buildings were conformed to the requirements. Those requirements have not changed. So what is the problem that we're solving for? Is it the from your perspective, there's a problem?
Yes.
Okay.
So, the problem is, one of the issues was the Breakneck Hill Road parking.
Okay.
And also the not enough parking space for the 154 Turnpike Road for when it's busy with the restaurants. It's to allow excess parking to park in that overflow lot, which it would be. But as of right now, the driveway was put in without any permission. And I believe Mr. DePietri came before the board and discussed that. So we really just want to address the parking issue in our point of view for the 154 Turnpike Road to allow the parking spaces that are not being utilized by 144 to be utilized by 154.
Okay, so thank you for that. So what I also heard you when you first started is you had said what the requirements were for parking spaces for each building. So
Yep.
they meet the requirements today. Those
Yes.
were calculated with maximum occupancy, whatever the type of people that would be there.
Yes.
I also understood that there's a parking garage.
Yes.
So how many spaces are in the parking garage?
23.
And how many parking spaces are utilized daily on the parking garage?
That answer I'm not 100% sure on.
So I think that would be really important for me to understand, because I'm not very familiar with that. I don't live in that area. I don't, but I did see pictures that it's closed. And so I think trying to understand how that space is utilized, if it's intended for parking, and we're just capturing more parking from the other, I would basically need some understanding from that perspective of utilization of parking spaces in the parking garage.
Okay.
And also, kind of Ola and Tommaso, maximum occupancy and what the requirements are for that, because
Okay.
it just doesn't, A and B is not adding to a resolution of what you're proposing for me, so I need some data, and it just doesn't appear to be in my packet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Stein.
Do you have any letters from the tenants of 154 indicating that the parking is insufficient?
I do not, but we can get those if need be.
Well,
They have had complaints to us,
I-
calling us.
I feel that,
But if we need to get in writing,
I think that the situation I mean, personally, I also have been to the site many times, never seen an empty or a full lot at the site, and I'm there frequently.
okay?
Never seen anybody parking on Breakneck Hill Road, I'm there frequently. So yes, I do feel that supporting documentation is warranted, substantiating the claim that the parking at 154 is insufficient.
Okay.
And I also feel that it's probably going to benefit the tenants of 144, and that's probably more of a motivation for this request. Would you agree with that?
I guess I don't understand the question. What was that?
So that the tenants of 144 can simply drive out and take a left onto Turnpike Road?
No, actually, when we did install the driveway, memos went out to 144 that they're not to use that driveway for cut-through access.
Please. We're not kindergarten people. Sorry.
So, okay, I'm trying to think of how to put this. To me, to come in here and request to give us the three options of either Jersey barriers, nothing, or granite and chains, I don't find any of those acceptable.
Okay.
And I would absolutely not vote to
Okay.
approve anything like that in this situation.
Okay.
Thank you.
If need be, we can put it back to its original state. Okay.
Mrs. Luttrell.
Good evening. I think you should investigate whether employees are actually parking in that garage, because when I've staked it out, they were parking in the overflow area and going in to work. I didn't see anyone go into the garage ever when I've been over there. So I'd be surprised if that garage is full, but could be, but not. I didn't see any activity there when I was there. Also, as Mrs. Gillespie mentioned, and I had a similar issue, the way it's set up with that driveway, it makes a dangerous situation, because when you're coming in and someone's coming from 144, and cars are parked there, you can't see each other. And not just to go straight ahead to park, but to go around too. But I almost got hit there, so that is an accident waiting to happen. And the bottom line for me is that I would hold with the conditions of the original site plan that there's no access of any kind from 144 to Breakneck Hill. And those three options don't satisfy that. They're all temporary, and would just make an enforcement nightmare, having to watch to make sure is the chain up, is the chain down, where are the Jersey barriers. So I also don't see an acceptable solution here. How many spaces from 144 are being taken for the overflow?
49.
49. So would that put 144 under its parking requirements?
Calculation, I believe, I don't have, hold on 1 second. So the required would be.
Does that help you, Dan? You see it on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then.
That would put.
So 144 would be out of compliance.
Correct, okay. Yeah, it would bring it under the 349 spaces required.
So I, as a planning board member, wouldn't approve a site plan that would make another site plan out of compliance. And yeah, and I also like the idea mentioned by the neighbors, just put a sign, go next door if you need to park. That's all I have.
So, several things could happen from this point on. We could continue the public hearing, and if you agreed, and come back with what you may think is more convincing information for the board and the neighbors, we could continue the public hearing.
Okay.
We could also accept that a capital group would withdraw the modification without prejudice and agree to either submit a new plan of modification or to say we are going to return the site to full compliance with the two site plans approved back in the 90s.
Okay.
154 and 144. It's important that we set a path tonight
Yeah.
on that, because we have the zoning enforcement officer fully tuned into this, and she has she's given you a letter and indicated that as long as there's movement toward some type of resolution, that
Yeah.
she would not impose fines or penalties against Capital Group for what you've done. So we need to get to a point where either you agree to return it to full compliance with the previous site plan approvals, or we continue on a path to find some other solution and show positive progress.
Yeah.
Or you sit back and say, this is it, these are the three options, we want you to vote on one of them, or versions of the three. I think that's our position.
Okay.
Now, if you take the position that you're going to withdraw without prejudice, then we'll just close the public hearing and that'll be the end of it, for now, or forever. If you say, no, we want you to vote on one of these, then I'm going to recommend to the board that we continue the public hearing, which we're allowed to do. We have until July 13th, and our next meeting is July 8th.
Okay.
In which case, it would appear that we would need guidance between now and then from town council to advise us on how to deny this modification. Because it appears, obviously we haven't taken a vote, but it appears that there's zero support for any of these three options from the board or from the neighbors.
Yep.
And in order for us to properly deny an application, I think we would be wise to be guided by town council to make sure that we did that properly. And we would use the time between now and July 8th to do that. So if you want to, if you know what you want to do now, Dan, you can say so. If you want to take a little bit of time and then come back 5 minutes, half hour,
Yeah.
and tell us what you want to do, I think we can do that.
Okay. Can we take a 5-minute break and I'll call Mr. DePietri and discuss?
Sure.
Okay.
We might move on to,
I believe I'm next.
well, we might skip over you
Okay.
on that and go to the A&R for 61 Breakneck. That way we can keep things moving.
Yep.
And it'll get, if you need a little bit of extra time, if you can't reach him right away,
Yeah.
We're trying to work with you to
Yes.
come to a fair decision tonight, or just say, there's no decision, just continue the hearing.
Okay.
So, off you go,
Okay.
and come back,
Yes.
and when you come back, we'll see where we are within the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay with the neighbors on that? We'll stick around for a little while. So 61, we're going to move on to an approval not required for 61 Breakneck Hill Road. It's on our agenda. And I'll ask the town planner to give us the background on this, and we'll also say hi to Mr. Bemis.
Okay. On or around just before May 24th, received an application for an A&R for 61 Breakneck Hill Road, owned by Mr. Paul Borden, Mr. Peter Bemis with Engineering Design Consultants representing him, Submitted an application which we filed with the town clerk on May 24th, as well as a A&R plan, which you see on the screen. I reviewed the plan. I met with Mr. Bemis. He made revisions based on my review comments. Those revisions were made. It appears he has proper frontage on a way. He added some notes, an explanatory note and other requirements that are in the application instructions specifically, so it meets all that. One thing I want to point out is on the application, Peter, under land designated not a buildable lot, you have your parcel A, and it should be parcel C.
Oh, we changed the letters. Okay.
So, we may be able to cross that off, put a C and initial it, and when we file the signed endorsement form, it gets resubmitted, possibly with that and that correction and the plan to the town
Okay.
clerk, if that's appropriate. If town clerk objects, we may need a revised application filed, and then it just goes to town clerk.
Okay. There was parcel A when we started.
All set, Karina?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go through this, but my brain's telling me now that that crossing out stuff doesn't fly with the town clerk, and maybe things have changed at the registry, but I'm just thinking of other times when we've done that and it gets bounced back, and you wind up losing a lot more time than if you just submit another one. So, go ahead, Peter. Were you all set?
I am. I mean, it's straightforward. We've got 2 frontage lots, and we created a parcel that we could deed to an abutter. So that's where parcel A came in, but we changed it to parcel C in the last iteration of the plan. And we just didn't catch the application form. So the intent is clear on what the plan is creating. And I don't anticipate any issues with that.
Application, maybe you could submit a new application and file it tomorrow, but you would have.
So you're saying that the plan is good, but the application is defective?
Again, the intent, in the plan that I think I had when I first came in with the paper copy, it did say parcel A. But when we actually submitted, we had made some edits that Karina had asked for, and parcel C became the designation on the plan. And there's a note on the plan that describes what is going to happen with parcel C. It's going to the abutter. So it's clear what the intent of the application is and what the intent of the plan is. It just happens to be a Scrivener's error on that application.
On the actual
Which I think can be
endorsement,
corrected.
on the endorsement form, it references the plan. Now, if the application is a formality, does the application itself doesn't get recorded at the registry of
It does
deeds?
not.
It's for town clerk's purposes and for planning. It's revised, though. Oh, no, this is when it was, oh, it does reference, it says the A&R plan, the A&R plan was received by the planning department and filed with the town clerk on May 24th. This plan was filed along with the application, so the town clerk has both of these. But the plan is what gets recorded at the registry of deeds.
And there's no Plan A, parcel A.
No.
Does anyone follow that? Because I think I am. I think I'm following it now. Mr. Stein?
Why don't you just fill out another form?
I'm good with that. I'm looking for your endorsement. Mr. Borden's here with me this evening. He has a real estate transaction scheduled for, it'll be before your next meeting.
I have a copy of the application that was not filed with the town clerk, which he could possibly amend, and then we file it tomorrow morning with the endorsed plan.
mean, I don't, personally, I don't mind signing, if the A&R plan itself is correct, I'm okay with endorsing it, as long as you're gonna correct the application.
Be happy to correct it.
I think you're right. I think that the application is, if there was a parcel A on the plan, then it would be confusing. But there is no parcel A.
No.
So that's the procedural discussion. Open it up to the board for questions or comments. Mr. Mills?
I have no questions.
Mrs. Houlihan?
No questions.
Mr. Stein?
No questions.
Mrs. Luttrell?
No questions.
Mr. Mills?
Make a motion that we approve the A&R for 61 Breakneck Hill Road, per plan dated May 21st, 2019.
Second for discussion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
So just on the condition that the proponent file a correct application.
So moved.
Um,
That's why I
Could-
said the plan.
Could we, right, but if we bring this to the town clerk and he says, just cross out the A and put a C.
Yeah, that's
I
why,
withdraw that.
that's why I just referenced the plan.
But you're right, for the record, it should, the application should match the plan. So maybe the motion would be, and
With an
possibly
amended
modify
application.
the application per guidance from the town clerk, something like that.
So moved.
Town clerk might say, no, just forget it, it's fine. Motion's been made and seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Peter, is that
Thank you
the
very much.
fastest A and R you've?
It's one of the best.
Too bad the application wasn't right, sorry. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good luck, Paul.
You'll sign it at the end, and I'll have it for you
That's fine,
tomorrow.
see you tomorrow, thank you.
Okay, Dan, you back? You're on.
So I spoke with Bill DePietri, and we are going to withdraw without prejudice and put it back to its original state.
Will you give us that in writing, or will you say tonight that you will give us that in writing tomorrow, or?
Yes, I will give that in writing to Karina tomorrow.
Okay, excellent. So after hearing that, the board, I think, needs to vote to accept your request to withdraw without prejudice. Any questions or comments, Mr. Mills?
Just curious, was there a time frame with that? Like, was it, I mean, is it, you thinking month, 2 months?
No, sooner.
October, like,
A month?
okay. I just, again, I think the building inspector needs to.
Yes.
A good time frame for, okay, if it hasn't happened within, seen progress in a
Yes.
certain amount of time,
Yeah.
then that's why I ask. Okay.
Okay.
So you're estimating a month.
Mrs. Luttrell?
So by put back in its original state, the landscaping's going to be put back?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, the code enforcement officer will look at the original approved plans.
Yep.
And make sure that what you reconstruct matches or exceeds what was approved. Any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public, the neighbors who all sit together?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the motion would be to
Accept the applicant's
applicant's
request
request for,
to withdraw without prejudice.
and was it?
Make a motion that we accept the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice the modification to 144 Turnpike Road and 154 Turnpike Road.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Now I think we need a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing for 144 Turnpike Road and 154 Turnpike Road.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearings. Any discussion? All in favor? Public hearings are closed. Thank you very much. Good luck.
I'm
how it
on
goes.
next, too. Oh, and Green, I did bring a notary.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Stonebrook Village subdivision, release of lots. Mrs. Luttrell.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself because I'm on the butter to this project.
I'll ask the town planner to update us on the progress on this discussion item. One month. So by the 4th of July, the site plan will be back in full compliance.
Yes.
Can I make a motion for a 2-minute recess?
Second.
Motion's been made for a 2-minute recess and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? We'll see you in 2 minutes. Planning Board is back in session after a couple-minute recess. Next item on the agenda is a Stonebrook Village subdivision release of lots, site bond document, and the town council review letter. I'll ask the town planner to update us on the action for this discussion item.
If you recall, several months ago, Fuss and O'Neill provided a initial bond review estimate. They went out to the site and they estimated an amount of work that was still remained to be finished for the construction, which was $168,000. In the interim, this culminated because the developer that Dan Weiss is representing, Mr. DePietri, asked for a release of the lots. When that happens, we ask for a bond to cover the remaining construction work. We've received a bond, which was submitted to town council, who reviewed it. And the bond is like an insurance policy to cover the $168,000, which will hold an original of, which if accepted, Bill DePietri will sign tomorrow. It's already been attested and endorsed, and town council approved it as an acceptable bond form. So this evening, if the planning board votes to accept the bond, then you would also vote to release the covenant of the definitive subdivision, Stonebrook Village. It is, and for lots 2 and 3. In the original covenant, lot 1 was exempt.
Correct.
So of the 3 lots, lot 1 was the daycare center, which is now a single-family home, which fronts on Oregon Road. It may front on Stonebrook now, I'm not sure, but
Still fronts on.
yeah. Lot 2 is another single-family home, and Lot 3 is the over 55 development of the 15 townhouse units. So you need 2 things: acceptance of the bond by the planning board as reviewed by town council, and then a vote to release the subdivision from its covenant.
And your recommendation to the board?
Is to accept the bond and release the covenant of the subdivision for Stonebrook Village, which is release of lots numbers 2 and 3.
Very good. I'll open it up to the board. Mr. Stein?
No questions.
Mrs. Houlihan?
No questions.
Mr. Mills?
No questions.
Mr. Mills?
Do I have something I'm gonna read, or are you gonna?
Oh. Well, you gotta accept the bond first, somehow. Do you vote that, or you just have a roll call?
To accept the bond.
Make a motion, we accept the bond for Stony Brook Village subdivision as approved by town council.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. Mr. Mills?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we release the covenant Stony Brook Village subdivision lots 2 and 3 as requested by the applicant.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. So we'll sign those now.
And Dan brought a notary because the form has to be attested, so you have to show your license for the
Hopefully you guys have
3
your
people.
license.
We need 3 signatures.
I don't have my license.
Oh, you don't have it? Unless she accepts, if she accepts who you are as a planning board member.
I drove him.
So we only have 2 of the 4 of us with picture IDs. No.
I'm calling the police and
No, I used it earlier in the day, and I just left it at home.
have a BJ's card or.
Credit card.
Yeah, they'll have the form over there.
Take a picture.
Take a picture and send it over? Is someone
No.
See this phone?
No, you've got 3. If you accept Mr. Stein, then you have 3. couple of bucks on me. Better working relationship.
Okay. So you're gonna file this with the town clerk? Okay, okay.
I'll send you a copy of PDF first.
Well, well, if to record it, I need the original.
And that original will be an attested
Okay, by the town clerk. Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I'm getting the original. Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yes, yeah.
Dan, are you all set? You saw what happened here with the signatures?
Yes, all set.
Good to go?
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Okay, next item on the agenda is, okay, we're back in order now. Master plan update discussion. The records show that Mrs. Luttrell has returned. Is she going to give the update, or are you going to start, Karina?
Very quick. It's the best minutes I've ever written.
Yes.
Here, take mine. Oh, there it is. Did I steal?
The,
Mrs. Luttrell.
the last master plan committee meeting on May 15th was canceled because we did not have a quorum, so we're trying again on Wednesday. So it's the same agenda, same homework, same bat channel, different date.
In your opinion, despite the lack of a quorum this one, this is the first time you haven't had a quorum, right? You've scheduled a meeting and not...
That's correct.
Do you think that, you guys have been going at this for 3 or 4 months? Do you think that you're making good progress?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'd also like to add that MAPC has signed the contract. Ralph Wilmer from the MAPC division who oversees this project and who gave us the grant for $15,000 of in-kind services is going to be forwarding us that contract for final signature here. So it's executed at MAPC. We're just waiting for it to get delivered here.
Any other questions or comments on the master plan? Next item on the agenda is a discussion item, appointment of master plan committee member. Karina?
We did that at the beginning of the meeting. You appointed
Mrs. Fanoff, yep.
Ronnie Fanoff.
Okay, other business properly before the board, the planner's report.
Yes. Some important things.
Call on the town planner to give the planner's report.
Okay. At the very end of your packet, you'll find a draft special permit application for adaptive reuse of historic buildings. Casey, my new assistant, created this today. It's a combination of a site plan application and a special permit application that we had on file. And this is in anticipation of Peter Bemis' upcoming submission for Fayville Hall. He plans on submitting a site plan review and also adaptive reuse of historic building for the renovation of Fayville Hall, I believe into an antique auction or an old-fashioned auction facility. So we'll see when that comes in. So it's basically a form, and I noticed that the other applications had been previously accepted by the planning board. There's nothing new here. It's the same information as most applications. I added the applicant and owner certification signatures as on the lid application, because we often run into the applicant not being the actual owner. So it eliminates that need for a certificate of authority, possibly, to vote. So if you're in agreement with this plan, with this application, and you accept it, then we'll use this for the upcoming, I'm going to forward it to Peter Bemis to use.
So the reason you did this is because there was no formal form to apply.
Correct.
So you created
Yeah.
a new form, a new application form.
Yeah, if you recall, 2 years ago, and Mimi was on the committee to prepare a bylaw amendment to add adaptive reuse of historic buildings. And it requires a site plan and also a special permit from the planning board with a process that's referenced in zoning code section 174-13.8 as outlined at the top. So we modified the instructions slightly from a standard special permit form and a site plan form to coincide with what's required. But it's very generic, but it provides an application form to be filed with the town clerk that starts the clock ticking for a special permit application.
Does the town clerk need to, like, has he already looked at it or anything? Like, since it gets filed with him, is there any, like, that, I don't know what
It
the
hasn't been looked at with him. It can be. If there's any changes, we can then revisit at the next meeting and re-accept it in a different format.
Yeah, I just make sure that it crosses all the, whatever he
Yeah,
needs.
what he needs. Because I noticed, like, we have a modification to site plan, but we don't have what the applicants do is they take the site plan application and they write dash modification of. There's no, we're gonna have to work on that one too. So in the next several months, we'll be cleaning up the forms.
Yeah, that's my only question. Great
I can do that.
initiative.
Oh, thanks.
Anyone else? Mrs. Houlihan.
Karina, just a quick question. When you have a historic property, is there something designated that gives you like a historic number or something? Obviously, we'd know the location and the map number and all that stuff. But is there something that designates it historical that should be a qualifier in this?
I don't think so. I think there's a document that identifies historic properties based on how old they are, and the Historic Commission keeps that, right? Kate happens to be on that commission.
We have a survey.
There's a survey, and I don't think there's a number identified to the property. Is there like a historic identifier?
I believe
number?
there is, actually.
Oh, so we could add something like that to the property.
Just so it's very clear, I think, would be just a point.
Yeah, we could do that. Check with town clerk. Because the special permit, part of the application process for that is a letter and a meeting with the Historic Commission, because they have to provide a report back to the planning board, I believe, on their findings and conditions they want. But we'll add that in there.
Anyone else? So the board, in the absence of any objections and those revisions, is giving you the green light to move ahead with this.
So there's a consensus to accept the form.
Agreed.
Okay. Yes. So today is June 3rd. Okay. We have meeting minutes. Oh no, planners report. Hold on. I got just a couple more things quickly. I'm happy to say we've executed a contract through the DPW for VHB to provide an update to the street tree guidelines for Southborough, to update the 2010 version. I'm also happy to say that we've executed a contract with Lucas Environmental, who is also the on-call consultant for conservation, for an additional set of open space inspections, 8 to 10 additional properties for this year. I'm working on a couple of other avenues for that, some other contracts. Park Central was on the Conservation Commission agenda on May 30th. However, they continued to the next meeting, in June. So that is still pending. I don't believe there was any discussion. The planning department has a legal opinion request into town council for status of the various actions and appeals and permits. Town council corresponded with me recently and said that he's working on it. It's just a little bit of a lengthy research to make sure he has everything correct when he gives us that feedback. The EDC is working on a grant application for the downtown business district in regards to the bylaw amendment that they're working on, and also to investigate septic system options. So they've applied for a grant to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. I know that Claire Reynolds worked diligently on it to get it in before the deadline last week, and planning provided her with some assistance on that. Typically, the town clerk gets a letter from the planning department indicating who is a member of the site plan review committee. Site plan review committee is made up of department heads, and as the town planner, I chair that site plan review committee. Site plan review committee happens when you don't have a major site plan application and it doesn't meet that threshold. There is what a minor site plan is, and it's the site plan review committee that reviews that. The issue is that town code section, is that Article 4? Or is that? 6. Article 6, Section 9-23 has a residency requirement for voting members of appointed governmental bodies, which was adopted in 2015. And it says that no person shall serve as a voting member of any appointed board, committee, or commission, or other appointed governmental body of the town of Southborough who is not a resident thereof. Non-voting members, if any, shall not be considered in determining the presence of a quorum. So, several of the members are not residents of Southborough. So I'm asking the board if I should submit a legal opinion request to town council on how to handle this. There may be a precedence of the committee having been formed prior to the adoption of that bylaw. I don't know. But I'm hoping that maybe Aldo can opine on that. So I'm just looking for consensus that I should do, that's the plan of action.
But in the course of asking Aldo a question, is it, one of the options is to keep the minor site plan review committee alive, keep it as an existing option for site plan, or to say we don't regardless of what the rules are relative to voting, we feel that the minor site plan review committee, there's no need for it. In which case, we would ask Aldo to guide us on how to dissolve it. And it's in the code, so we'd have to have a warrant article to dissolve it, even if it doesn't exist between now and when that were to happen. So if the board wants to continue to have a minor site plan review function, we should say so now. And that will guide Karina's question to Aldo. Jesse?
Have you found, Karina, this to be a helpful group in our process?
I've only had one occasion since my 2.5 years here to have that. I prefer a public hearing in a sense that it allows abutters of a project to be aware and give comment. I don't think that they cannot go to a site plan review committee meeting because it is open meeting law and anyone can attend and there's meeting minutes required. It only takes one vote against the project to trigger it to go to the planning board.
So, Dawn, would this therefore dissolve the minor modification option? Would everything have to be a major modification?
Modification, no, it would either be, it's not modification, it's just site plan. There's minor site plan, and then there's major site
So
plan.
would this eliminate minor site plans?
All departments review major site plan. The same people that are on this review committee all get a copy of the plan set when there's a public hearing
So
of
that,
the submission.
so the result would be that one instance where you had a minor site plan, that would then come before us and we'd vote on it. Is that right? If we vote to abolish the minor, then they'd all come to us.
That's right.
I'd be in favor of that.
That makes sense to me, sure.
I've always felt that it was, that we weren't that busy to review all of them as a board. And I think the minor site plan trigger is 2,000 square feet. So somebody could come in with a 40-foot by 50-foot building and not go through a major site plan. That's a big building. So is it the board's desire to advise Aldo that we're suggesting that we dissolve the minor site plan function?
Yes.
So is there any benefit in keeping it unless if there's some little, because I agree with you, I think the more transparency, the better. But if someone wants to add 2 parking spaces that have to come before the
Site plan.
board.
Right, it's 2 to 20 parking spaces, so it's 2,000 square feet of change of use or
Under 5 parking
square
spaces.
foot, or, no, 5 to 20 parking spaces. Let me just read it, it's right here. I'm sorry. So, it's right here. Here we go. Minor plan review.
Oh,
Any
5 to 20, you're right.
Yeah, any new development or expansion in use other than a single-family or two-family residence which adds less than 2,000 square feet of floor area, or which would require at least 5 but fewer than 20 parking spaces, regardless of the number of parking spaces existing on the premises, or any change of use of a facility that totals less than 2,000 square feet shall be subject to minor plan review by the Site Plan Review Committee.
Okay, I read it wrong.
And
So,
just-
yeah, get rid of it.
And note that conservation sits in on the meeting, but they don't get to vote. That's another thing, where they can comment and all, but they don't get, they comment with here too, so the process,
All set? You get your answer?
yep.
So the question to Aldo then would be, that the board has a desire to dissolve the minor site plan function and ask him to advise us on how to do that, which would probably just be a zoning warrant article that would delete that section of the code.
Okay.
Yeah, Tim?
Tim Litt. I'm listening to this and I'm wondering a little bit about the impact on people who want to do minor things. It seems like, this puts them into a heavier weight process. Now, either way, it looks like you have to change code. So maybe another thing to consider would be to say that rather than review by a committee, which falls under that bylaw, you say you get input, because it sounds like all the members are department heads. So say the planning board gets input from the department heads on things of this size and makes a decision without all that heavyweight process. I mean, it doesn't sound to me like, that the full-blown public hearing, you have to drag in attorneys, you have to fill out forms, you have to take months of legal notices and all that. Makes sense if you're going to add 1 parking space to a 500, parking space facility, or if you're going to add a sunroom to your house or whatever the other minor things are. So I'm just a little hesitant to always turn things into heavier weight process.
Over the years, the board has adjusted fees, reduced requirements. We're able to waive a lot of that heavy stuff if it is something that's minor. But if you live next door to some of these things, you know, most people would say, well, that's minor, but if you live next door to it, it's not minor.
Well, I think that's a fair point, but there has to be some, you know, threshold of sanity as well. I'm not quite sure what it.
That's foreign to us, Tim.
I don't know. I've attended enough of your meetings that you do seem to be generally sane people.
If you were here earlier, I didn't feel that the process that we witnessed tonight was onerous in any way. I thought it was very straightforward and not very heavy at all, even considering the magnitude of which, what was applied for. So I respectfully disagree with your position. I feel like we're acting in good faith here.
Oh, I'm not
on behalf
saying
of the
that you're not acting in good faith. On the other hand, you know, I think just about everything that comes here gets continued once or twice. At least as I listen, and I haven't kept score.
Not the 144 and 154. Tonight was the first night we heard it, and we resolved it.
With one guy was here.
You mean the people who were in violation from discussions that have been going back since January? So, yeah, he came back with.
The application we just got,
plan is
we
10
actually
minutes.
got the application, it was resolved
Look,
in
I don't
one
want
day.
to have an argument over it.
Major
I
site
just thought it
plan,
was worth pointing out that, you know, it's not always ideal to make everything as complicated as possible.
You could
But
change the
just to clarify, Tim, site plan is non-residential, so if you're adding a sunroom, that
Yeah.
doesn't come to site plan.
Bad
And
example.
it's 5 to 20 parking spaces. So 5 is a lot of parking spaces. I wouldn't
Well-
want that happening next to me outside of a public meeting.
The language that was read from the bylaw is, you know, notwithstanding, you know, the number of spaces that are currently there. So if you already have 1,000 parking spaces and you're adding 5, it probably doesn't matter. If you are, you know, if you have 1 and you're adding 5, it's a big deal.
To continue to gang up on you and your comments, we do hear from people that say things you know, these site plans always seem to get continued. And if you look, we had Ken's Foods, and we were ready to vote tonight. I think the board was. But based on the comments, especially from the applicant, is willing to make some revisions and come back. If you go to the 118, 120 Turnpike Road, that huge parking garage, they didn't have all the information. So you have to continue it.
I'm not saying you.
And that's the case, you know, that's the case with a lot of them, and it's just the way that it works. They develop, they do the in-depth design to a certain point, and then they start to air it out and then modifications, revisions to the design. So, especially on a night like tonight, I'd rather be somewhere else watching the Bruins than continue, you know, going to these continued hearings, but it's just, it's a team effort of trying to get through it, and it doesn't usually happen in one night.
Well, I
Does
was
anybody else want to beat up on Tim? Sam,
I actually
He does
wanted
it
to come to his
regularly.
defense a little bit. So just a question, Karina. So as you said, you only came to a site plan discussion once in over 2 years. So can you characterize what that decision, like what was it? And did it move to a planning board meeting anyway, or it didn't? It was resolved in that?
We resolved it there, but it was touch and go.
But I guess the question is like the magnitude of it. What exactly? Because I guess
It was a parking lot.
I'm new.
It was a parking lot,
It was a parking lot.
yeah, for 12 spaces. And, you know, it worked well. And I look back in the record of other site plan review committees. I want to say there were only like 3 of them or 4 in the last 6 years or 7 years. I have a book, a 3-ring binder, and we list them with an index, and there haven't been that many. Most are advised to go to planning board and not lose the 2 months it might take to apply for site plan review for minor, go through it, and then something objectionable comes up, and then now you're gonna have to reapply.
Right.
And now you're taking another 2 months at least to start, so now you're 4 months, whereas just go right ahead and don't risk it, because and you need a unanimous vote of all those people involved.
So I think given the criteria that you've just explained and the fact that it's used at such a de minimis amount over the time, and you need a unanimous vote, it just seems to make sense, the requirement that we would abolish it. So I'm in agreement.
Next item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes, May 13th.
Make a motion, we approve the meeting minutes from May 13th, 2019 as written.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. Good job, Kate.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, 1 second on that.
You said you were going to keep it going.
The contracts that Karina spoke about earlier is an example of, especially the one where we use the DPW's on-board contract mechanism. And to me, that's an example of efficient government and the different departments working together, sharing resources. And then, I guess that's it. So we have to sign these before we go. Anything else?
And the A&R.
Just spread it out on the table.
So sign once on top and once in the bottom, next to your name.
Black or blue pen?
This is the Registry of Deeds notice.
So the remainder of this meeting is just us signing papers that we've discussed in public. Mr. Mills?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? We're adjourned.